this ring is something else.
In a battle where anything can happen, and probably will.
Hello, I love you. Won't you like and subscribe? It is I, the J-Shot, and we are back on the UFC Express, stop number 17.
This event was known as Redemption. So since they assume everyone watching is a complete blithering idiot, they literally spell out the word, meaning and all, just to make sure we're following along.
Redemption.
We're coming to you live from Mobile, Alabama, the city best known for producing Hank Aaron, a bunch of race car drivers, and of course, one of Kanye's workout plan's most impressive transformations. Kicking off the broadcast is Mike Goldberg, flanked by Andy Anderson. Although no, we're not that lucky. He's not here for commentary, likely just keeping an eye on the ring card girls he probably supplied, and making sure they don't forget they're not at the totally nude steakhouse tonight, and that they keep it PG. Tonight, we're looking at a middleweight tournament where we'll see the debuts of Carlos the Ronin Newton and Dan Hollywood Henderson. Can they get through their first round matchups against Bob Gilstrap and Alan Goes? We shall soon find out. In addition, Charles the Man of Ice Liddell will also mark his first foray into the octagon. And
Not one,
not two, but three.
heavyweight super fights.
just don't ask me what the criteria is to call them that, though. Yes, veterans like Tank Abbott and Mark Coleman are involved, but they're up against octagon newcomers, and so are both of the guys in the other bouts. Super fights indeed.
If it seems like this card has that hastily slapped together feel, there's a reason for that.
You see, the old Hammer was looking to swing his way back into the win column against the new UFC heavyweight champ, Randall P. Couture. But an injury forced the Natural to withdraw, and so they set the match for 12 years later when his knee would be good and ready. Why Coleman didn't fight Tank instead, which would have kept with the traditional rules of a super fight, you know, making sure it's two guys you've actually heard of, is lost on me. But anyway, Joe Rogan is backstage and, as always, ready to drop some serious knowledge on the masses.
Notably, the absence of Victor Belfort. I mean, first we've had the intestinal injury that he had, or a virus or a worm or whatever it was.
I gave myself a tapeworm.
Well, that is the most disgusting thing.
How, you wondering?
No, I don't. No, thanks.
I bought poop on the dark web and stuffed it up my butt to lose weight.
First up is Mr. Hollywood himself, Dan Henderson.
He walks out looking like he just took an H-bomb to the eye, but that's what you get when you're a real American wrestler. A raw guy, you could say.
And look at how well his opponent, Mr. Alan Goes, matches up against him. You're questionable against submissions. I'm excellent at them. Although my striking, now that is questionable. Oh, and yours is powerful, especially in the clinch? Well, I better plan to head for the ground, where my defense will surely come in handy. The middleweight tournament kicks off with the opposite of a bang. The two barely touch for nearly 2 full minutes. That's when Hendo gets hit with a right hand and scrambles for a leg lock, really throwing us for a loop after reading those stats a minute ago, guys. Danny Boy lands shots while in the guard and looks content on the ground until a submission attempt makes him reconsider. But when he swarms in, he gets dropped again, and that could have been all she wrote, except his opponent didn't read the rule book. Because unlike some previous events,
They're going over the rules now that there aren't any of.
He kicked Henderson while he was down.
Blotnick has it figured out immediately, and after Joe Hamilton confers with Big John, he does too. The fight is restarted with just moments remaining in regulation time. During the break, Henderson's corner gives him a tip that could easily sway the fight in his favor.
Don't try to get him until you got him.
They trade shots back and forth on their feet until time expires, with a couple wardrobe malfunctions mixed in for good measure. Despite being a very close match, the judges are unanimous in their decision, and the Hollywood heavy hitter has landed a gig in the middleweight tournament final.
15 minutes of middleweight mayhem down, 15 more to go, perhaps? Let's see.
With Maurice Smith in his corner, and a name he had to have been mercilessly made fun of for while growing up, you have to assume Bob Gilstrap is one tough mamma jamma, which he'll need to be as he tries to send the Ronin, Carlos Newton, back home to that big maple tree factory up north.
It'll be interesting to see how he matches up here against a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist. Excuse me, Canadian Jiu-Jitsu specialist.
Canadian Jiu-Jitsu, eh? Wonder what that would look like.
Yeah, that's about right.
Lucky for Gilly, he's a good puncher and kicker. That, unlike his questionable grappling skills and dad bod, should serve him well and give Carlos a run for his money. Or not. It takes the Ronin less than a minute to slam, mount, attempt an armbar, and then sink in the rarely seen at the time triangle choke on old Bobby G. If the debuts of two UFC legends wasn't enough, how about one more? Chuck Liddell, in his first MMA fight ever, which was an alternate bout, meaning we were that close to seeing Chuck versus Hendo way back in 1998. It doesn't seem possible, but here we are. His opponent is Noe Hernandez. A powerful puncher, sure, but kicks are his kryptonite. And, well, he's also apparently completely insane.
In the ring, there's a cat and a dog. The cat will always scratch and move and has the speed. The dog always want to trap the cat in the ring, bites his head off, tear it off. I want to be the dog.
Okay. Liddell's lid is not quite the mohawk we're used to, but it's close. He's good at kicking and punching, says no thanks to being taken down, and his endurance is question mark. But the biggest question is, why would a good-looking, college-educated man like him want to fight for a living?
My parents say, like, why are you fighting? Why don't you get a real job? I was an accounting major.
Wow, accounting, huh? After everything I said in the All Access review. I guess the title Redemption doesn't just refer to Coleman. The two big swinging fighters hit the ground immediately and stay there for the first few minutes. Once on their feet, Liddell does throw kicks despite wearing shoes from time to time, but you don't see much of the trademark haymakers we'd come to know and love later in his career. It's a textbook kickboxing match with a little grappling mixed in. Save for a few flurries from Hurricane Hernandez, it's clear Chuck has the upper hand, and after 12 minutes and no overtime, he gets his first dub in the octagon.
Chuck Liddell opens up his UFC career with a victory.
And you, young
Chuck Liddell.
We will watch your career with great interest.
And now for something completely different.
It's the first of our 3 heavyweight super fights. And no, you may not ask what's specifically needed to deem a contest that. And now that we've got that out of the way, you can just sit back and enjoy.
Don't ask questions. Just consume
super fight
and then get excited for next
super fight.
It's a pair of UFC newcomers. 3-0 Mike Van Arsdale, fresh from winning some one-night tournament in Brazil, taking on Joe Pardo, who at this point was batting .500 through 2 fights.
Both are over 30 years old. The weight difference is minimal. The height difference even less so.
Ooh, Goldie is getting close. Anyways, it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu / boxing versus wrestling. The age-old comparison. Van Arsdale, a seasoned grappler who Blotnick says is well acquainted to this type of contest.
He'll sprawl like the Dickens here.
And indeed he does. Really, despite both being relatively new to the sport, they're highly athletic and well-trained in their disciplines. A big kick to the chops from MVA around the 2-minute mark brings the fight to the ground, where Pardo gets a hold of a leg and tries for a sub. He ends up on the receiving end of some ground and pound for his troubles, and around the 7-minute mark, a wardrobe malfunction puts the action on pause. Van Arsdale's in control throughout, and with only a minute left in regulation, he finds an Americana and becomes a UFC heavyweight super fight winner, much to the delight of the crowd on hand.
But if you're familiar with this channel, you know what I always say. One heavyweight super fight just simply is never enough. Luckily, we've got another one teed right up. This time it's huge Hugo Duarte against David Lawless Abbott himself. We all know it's being served at Thanksgiving, and that's a whole lot of shit talk. But Senior Duarte didn't show up to the table empty-handed.
He says Tank is not a fighter. He does not have any skill. He is going to get beat up badly.
Add to his roasting skills his ability to mix strikes and submissions. A concept so simple, it's a wonder no one had ever thought of it before now. But if there is one knock, it's that pesky zero UFC experience as he dives right into this heavyweight super fight. Fortunately, Hugo absorbed all of Harold Howard's octagon prowess when Double H absorbed about 50 of Hugo's punches.
Hugo Duarte, is that the guy on the coffee can?
Abbott comes into this super fight at his most slender. He's a deuce and a half, down 30 whole pounds, still with tremendous punching power, plenty of first-hand octagon experience, and submissions, question mark. This should be good. The pit fighter stuffs a takedown in the opening seconds and wastes no time launching grand slams into Duarte's dome. Although he's brought to the ground, he quickly fends off a couple submission attempts and proceeds to tee off on the back of his opponent's head until Big John is satisfied. And speaking of satisfied, what's with this?
What? I'm out, man.
What a special night has been so far. And there's plenty more left to come. We are so back. But even I couldn't possibly guess what could follow up all the great action we've seen tonight.
I'm here with Campbell McLaren, the race director for SEG Motorsports.
Why?
It's a bit out of the ordinary for Rogan to interview just some random guy no one knows, but hey, their chemistry is undeniable.
These are not funny cars.
They're street legal, but what I'm saying is these are cars that have been altered.
These are not stock cars, but you and I could drive them.
Well, I got one of those.
You do? Good for you. I got to get one.
They're a lot of fun.
All right.
I get you a lot of ticket stuff.
Okay, let's get back to the task at hand and wrap up that middleweight tournament, shall we?
Dan Henderson and his giant neck are teaming up in this final contest. Does Carlos have an answer for them? Time to find out. Frank Shamrock joins Blotnick and Goldberg on the call, and you know what? This should really be a UFC standard. Get the champs on the commentary desk whenever top contenders are in the cage. Make them wear a heart monitor too. Milk it for all it's worth. Just moments in, and Henderson tries to stifle Newton's fast hands with a slam, but ends up in a guillotine that he fights his way out of. He remains on top until Big John stops the action to deal with some more glove drama. Someone needs to fire this manufacturer. Carlos scores on a slam, but can't keep the Greco-Roman wrestler on his back for long. Already, though, Henderson shows he's more than a one-dimensional fighter, landing knees and throwing bombs, looking for the knockout. Newton is no slouch, though, and he makes a real case for the judges throughout. 12 minutes, no winner. 3-minute overtime, no change. The judges render their decision, and all three are starstruck by Hollywood, giving Dan Henderson the W and a medal. We've still got the last of the 3 heavyweight super fights to look forward to, and fans have the Night of Champions to get excited about. What is that, you ask?
Coming at you in July, middleweight champion Frank Shamrock defends his title, plus Gracie, Shamrock, Severin, Fry, Coleman, and Abbott.
Wow, what a stacked card.
In the fights that made them UFC legends.
Oh, well, that's less exciting, I guess. And even more so when you find out that Shamrock fight won't even be live. It's actually recorded here tonight. So why don't we just take a look right now? He's up against little Jeremy Horn, just 22 years old, but already with 14 fights under his belt. And 3 of them draws?
Seems a bit high.
Right around the time Frank is normally wrapping things up, Horn catches a kick and turns it into a takedown. He keeps position and even finds mount, but Frank eventually finds his way out.
He's quite physical despite maybe not looking like a very muscular body.
His lanky frame does well to smother brother Shamrock, but there's not much damage being done. Because of this, they compare him to Royce Gracie. But even Royce was known to pull a ponytail or two.
So many fighters want a chance at Frank Shamrock, Jeremy Horn included.
Who knows? Maybe if he plays his cards right, he'll get his wish one day. Near the 10-minute mark, Frankie locks in a guillotine that looks like it'll do the trick, but the wily young veteran stays calm and finds a way out. How on earth did he pull that off?
Jeremy Horn is a Gumby.
I'm Gumby, damn it!
It's definitely a back-and-forth battle that needs an overtime period. Just before the extra inning starts, Big John says the same thing the bouncer at my neighborhood pub says when I try to sneak in for just one last Michelob Ultra.
Turn around, Jeremy, turn around!
Horn tries hard to get a takedown when the action resumes, but Frank and his grip on the cage say no can do. Unfortunately, when he finally does complete the takedown, Frank takes advantage and submits him with a knee bar.
All right, time for the main event. A heavyweight super fight to put to shame all of the other heavyweight super fights we've seen tonight.
You know him, you love him. Former heavyweight champ Mark Coleman. And, another UFC rookie, Pete Williams. It'll still be good. It has to be. P-Dub may only be 3-0 in MMA, but he's got several Pancrase wins to boot. Plus, he's wearing Adidas 3-stripe tearaways. You don't rock those unless you're hardcore. It's a fact.
Do you think anybody wants a roundhouse kick to the face while I'm wearing these bad boys?
He's got good submissions, brackets, Lion's Den. Powerful leg kicks. That is what you kick with. but his grappling ability, I don't know. The Hammer returns to the octagon looking diesel as ever, but just what effect has the knee injury had on him? That, my friends, is unknown. I tell you what though, the fans are on his side. Coleman316 says, I just whoop your ass. And also, let's not forget, he's a G. Petey Boy showing no nerves, heading straight across the cage to engage. But the much stronger Coleman is able to control the action in the early going. However, while the godfather of ground and pound is in his element, he's missing one tried and tested technique from his arsenal.
One of the key rules to keep in mind, the headbutt has been removed.
Can't change the rules just because you don't like how I'm doing it.
After they're brought back to their feet, Coleman delivers a big shot, but he starts to look considerably gassed. Williams weathers the storm until regulation expires and comes out swinging in overtime. No doubt if you've seen KO highlight reels from back then, or even of all time, you've seen what happens next. Coleman, too tired to keep his hands up, eats all of Pete's foot and settles for getting his redemption some other time. UFC 17, while still confused about what exactly constitutes a super fight, is a pretty solid card T to B. No less than 7 fighters deserving of the UFC Hall of Fame appear if you count the Shamrock Horn fight. Plus, it's a bit of a turning point as it's the first event with Jeff Blotnick as commissioner and the first when the term mixed martial arts was widely used, rather than Ultimate Fighting, No Holds Barred, or any of the other truly silly names they threw around nonstop prior to this night.
As always, my friends, thanks so much for watching. Hit the like and subscribe button, and don't be a stranger as there's plenty more content coming to the channel very soon. All the best.